like, it's great, but it's also terrible. It's like an Easter egg hunt, like finding all the little clues that things go together. I'm an Ottessa Moshfegh stan at this point, honestly, and it was very strange and just made me very uncomfortable. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I am beginning a new reading vlog. This is the February reading vlog, and I have decided to tackle all of my short story collections. So a while ago I had been really into short stories, and I bought a lot of more recent short story collections just because usually the short stories that I read for school were older stories like Flannery O'Connor or Shirley Jackson. Sometimes like The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Yeah, there's just a lot of different older stories that I read, which I absolutely loved. But I wanted to know more about the genre as it progressed later in time. So I ended up buying quite a few more modern short story collections, and I read a decent amount of them, but I still have a few that I haven't tackled yet. And I thought that it would be cool to kind of take you along with me on the process of reading all of these, because short story collections, they can be kind of hit or miss. You can have some stories that are really great, some that aren't really good at all within a collection. And it just depends on the author's voice and the different topics of the short stories. So that being said, I'm going to show you the books that I'm going to be reading in this vlog. I am going to read Mothers by Chris Power. I know pretty much nothing about this book other than the cover. It was so intriguing to me. And I feel like with short stories, it's kind of hard to go into it understanding what it's really about unless the stories revolve around one central topic. This one doesn't really revolve around a specific topic. It's just random stories by Chris Power. So this one I'm hoping to read in this vlog, and it looks really interesting. Then, of course, I have to read Ottessa Moshfegh. This is Homesick for Another World. I love Ottessa Moshfegh. I've talked about her multiple times on my channel, and I really want to read her short story collection because I've read, at this point, all of her novels, I believe. I haven't read McGlue, which is a novella, but I've read all of her actual novels. So I'm excited to read her short stories just because I think it's going to be an interesting narrative form for her. She is so well known for a very odd type of narration and really unlikable characters. So I'm really interested to see in how that's going to translate into this medium. So yeah, I'm going to be reading this one. Then I'm going to be reading The Dark Dark by Samantha Hunt. All I know about this one is it's very dark, as the title suggests, but it's very odd, kind of surreal, and I really like the cover. It's kind of like a Rorschach test looking cover. But yeah, this sounded really interesting. I've heard a lot of good things about Samantha Hunt, and yeah, that's all I know about this. I think that's kind of a theme with short story collections. I don't really buy them for the synopses. I buy them either for the covers, if I've heard good things about the author, and if the concepts overall sound interesting. But I don't know a lot about what the individual stories are about. Okay. Then I have The Secret Life of Walter Mitty by James Thurber. This one is, I ended up getting this because The Secret Life of Walter Mitty is a movie that I am obsessed with. I love that movie so much. It's probably in my like top 5 favorite movies of all time. And I didn't realize until last semester in college that the movie, it was inspired by a short story by James Thurber. Which was just fascinating to me. And I read it and I was like, wow, I need to know more about James Thurber and his writing style. So I'm going to be reading this collection of other short stories, including The Secret Life of Walter Mitty by James Thurber. And what an interesting cover, I have to say. So yeah, I'm excited to see if they're all as good as the one I read. And then I have Animal Wife by Lara Ehrlich. I just randomly picked this up one day at a bookshop, and the cover was immediately drew me in. It was fascinating. But this is an entire collection about womanhood and the different areas of womanhood and what it means to be a woman in society, I believe. And I guess it's very surreal and has a lot of really strange things going on in it, which is right up my alley. So hopefully I will enjoy this one a lot. So yeah, those are the books that I will be reading in this vlog, and let's get into it. Hello everyone, good morning. So far in this vlog you have seen me read at home in my bed and while I'm at work at the library. So very interesting vlog so far. But anyway, I am reading Animal Wife by Laura Ehrlich, and I am approximately 70 pages into this one so far. And it is extremely strange. I'll just say that right off the bat. I mean, the cover kind of indicates the strangeness, which I'm totally here for. But the first two stories in this collection were extremely surreal. There's a lot of like folklore and kind of fairy tale-esque vibes to these stories. Like, there's in the third story that I just finished, there is a creature called the Undertoad, which is kind of like the undertow, but it lives underneath the dock in the ocean, I believe. It's like a part of the ocean. And it comes up and it grabs like little girls' legs. So there's a lot of kind of like fairy tale-esque, like troll under the bridge kind of elements to the stories. The third story that I just finished is about a young girl and a boy who she sees every summer when she visits her grandmother, and about how she has particularly high standards, or quote-unquote high standards, for how she wants her first kiss to be and her first relationship, and how she doesn't want it to be like the other girls have, just sexual relationships. She wants it to be more meaningful than that. And it's about kind of over a few summers her growing into herself, her budding sexuality, and her dealings with the changes in her body. And I find that story fascinating, and I think it was really well done. I'm really interested to see where the rest of these stories go. As part of my reading today, I joined in on Books Unbound live show that they do with all their patrons on Patreon, and I'm having so much fun. So I'm so happy that I get to be part of this awesome community. Okay, so a few hours have gone by and I have finished Animal Wife, and I feel conflicted because there were a few stories in here that I found brilliant and fascinating. And there was a lot of stories that I just didn't enjoy that much. But overall, I think the highlight of this book was the themes that were discussed and how the stories were woven together. I went through and made a bunch of notes as I was going through the book. And I just wrote about the ways that the themes of each story kind of played into each other. So it seems like the stories go kind of in age order from younger children all the way to older women. So that was an interesting dynamic. And I also found that they kind of like go in pairs a little bit, where the first two stories dealt with parental relationships, and then the next two talked about like puberty and budding sexuality and changes in that way. So there was kind of like, they weren't like the same stories exactly. There were definitely differences between them, but they did work together in kind of pairs thematically. And I'm not going to talk too specifically about each story, but I found that some of the overall themes are female invisibility, the duality between what is expected and what is real, or what the real personalities of these women are. What else? Parental relationships, coming into one's own in terms of sexuality, or just identity as a woman. Let's see. A lot about relationships and how choosing a particular relationship can affect your future, or choosing not to have a relationship or not to get married or not to have kids, how that affects your future. There was also discussion of miscarriage, kind of separate from the like motherhood sections. That was the last story. There was a miscarriage. So there was a lot going on. From the cover, I was expecting it to be a lot more related to like the 50s or that kind of like traditional homemaker time period. But I found that like there was mentions of Game Boy, kids playing Game Boy. There was mentions of the store Borders, the old bookstore that I used to go to way before I went to Barnes & Noble. I always went to Borders. So that kind of reminds me of that early 2000s time, and also like the late 90s. But yeah, it was really interesting to see that it wasn't set in the 50s like I expected it to be. But I guess the cover more relates to the concept of the traditional woman and how you can kind of break out of that, or if you're able to break out of the traditional womanhood. So those are my thoughts on it. Overall, I think I'm going to rate it about 3 stars. I did really enjoy analyzing the themes and the ideas in this book, but I found a lot of the stories were just a little bit too surreal and strange, and I didn't always entirely understand what was trying to be, I guess, said. So yeah, that's my review of this one, and I will let you know when I start reading the next one. Okay, so totally pivoting directions, I'm going to be starting The Secret Life of Walter Mitty by James Thurber. It's a really tiny story collection. But I'm going to be doing so by listening to some YouTube recordings of the various stories. Because this is kind of an old collection, there are a lot of recordings of the individual stories, so I'm just going to be listening to those. And while I do that, I am going to, hello, giant tower of books, I'm going to be stamping with my little date stamp all of the Wings of Fire books of when I actually finished them. A while ago, I started actually date stamping all of my books when I finished reading them, just the ones that I know I want to keep, and I didn't do any of these for some reason. So while I listen to my audiobook, I am just going to go through Goodreads, see when I finished each of the books, and date stamp them. While I'm over here, I just wanted to show you my bookmark. So I ended up making this bookmark a few days ago. So I used watercolor and pen to make little books on a bookshelf. And so each of the books is going to represent a book that I use the bookmark with. So I have Animal Wife written right there. And I'm going to add mothers to it. And yeah, it was really easy and fun, and I'm excited to use this in all of my reading vlogs.
Those on purpose. I like them, Sunny said.
Taking a short break to watch my boyfriend read Wings of Fire on Twitch. Yay! Okay, so it's been a few days since I last updated you because I was sick and looked like a hot mess, so I did not want to film anything. But I am about 70% through The Secret Life of Walter Mitty by James Thurber, and I have some thoughts. So I ended up listening to a decent amount of these stories, either through like YouTube recordings, and then I found a few on Libby in a different collection. But I got about like halfway through the stories, and then there were no more recordings. So now I am just doing the physical reading. So far, most of the stories in this collection have been kind of in the comedy genre. James Thurber wrote in like the 30s and 40s, so there definitely is a very distinct feeling to the stories that they are from that kind of time period. The thing that I'm noticing the most in this collection, though, is the fact that yes, they're comedic, but some of them have kind of more serious undertones, and it almost reminds me of Shirley Jackson's work when she wrote about her family. She had a column for years just writing little stories about being a mom and her family life and her kids, and they were made into 2 books later on. And they kind of have this similar tone of they're really funny stories. They're kind of like playing off of the silly things that happen in day-to-day life, but they kind of have a more ominous undertone or a more serious undertone, talking about her struggles with motherhood and the expectations for women, and kind of more intense or I don't know, social commentary kind of underneath them. And this, I feel like, has a similar thing to it, because there's a couple of stories that I read that talk about married relationships or couples in general who seem like they're just kind of, oh, they're arguing, they're whatever, and you start to realize that there is like potentially verbal abuse going on, and it's kind of talking about how men can get away with a certain kind of talking and speech to their wives, but when a wife kind of tries to give that back, it causes problems. So I'm not sure if I'm just reading into it or if that was what was intended. I'm not sure how progressive James Thurber was in the 30s and 40s, so I'm not exactly sure if that was meant to seem normal or if he's meant to give commentary on that. But I am enjoying the fact that these stories, while they are fun and comedic and make me laugh, there's also more of an undertone for me to examine what's trying to be said. So I'm going to continue reading this, and I will let you know when I finish it. Okay, sorry for the shitty quality video. I'm filming on my phone and it's dark outside, so whatever. But I just wanted to update you and tell you that I have finished The Secret Life of Walter Mitty by James Thurber, and I liked it, but it wasn't my favorite. I think this is going to be a theme with this video in terms of short story collections, just in general, because there are some stories in this collection that I found really fun and interesting and thought-provoking, and then other ones that I just couldn't care less about. Topics I wasn't interested in, or characters that I couldn't get attached to, or scenarios I just wasn't interested in. Some stories in any short story collection are just not going to hit home with you, and that's fine. Overall, I did really enjoy this. I think it was a good experience getting some older short stories along with the newer ones that I've been reading for some of the other collections. And I really loved the story, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. That specific story is one of my favorite short stories of all time. So I still found it valuable to, 1, reread that, and 2, to get more of a perspective of James Thurber in general and his writing style. So that is 2 books down, and I have started reading another book, and that is Mothers by Chris Power, which I am about 90 pages into. So far, how I feel about Mothers is very, very positive. Honestly, I think this is probably my favorite start that I've had to any of the collections so far. Each story in this collection feels incredibly unique. Like, none of the stories so far have felt anywhere near similar. It's almost like impossible to figure out what the connecting thing is. So in the contents section, you can see there's only a few stories, and the first one is Mother 1 and then the title. Later there's a Mother 2 and then the title, and then Mother 3 is the last story. So I'm assuming that the reason for the collection's name is because there are 3 stories related to mothers, but I don't know what ties the stories in between together. There doesn't seem to be any thread running through them. There is some discussion of relationships throughout, but it's not really the main focus always. Or if it is, it's not the main focus of every single story. So I'm interested to see if I can find some more trends or themes as I go through this. But so far, I really enjoy the writing style. I really enjoy that Chris Power does not shy away from difficult subjects and intense language. I'm not somebody who's put off by those things, and I think it actually enriches the experience because it feels more realistic. So I'm really, really enjoying this so far, and I will update you when I do some more reading. Hey, sorry for the absolutely terrible angle, but I don't know how much footage I got in the actual bookstore, but I went to Barnes & Noble today because it's Valentine's Day, and I'm all alone on Valentine's Day, and I figured it would just be fun to go do something a little bit different today. At Barnes & Noble, I got 2 books because they have a deal with certain books. It's buy one, get one 50% off, and I also have a membership, so I get an extra 10% off, so that was great. But I ended up getting The Authenticity Project by Claire Pooley. I've been seeing this book absolutely everywhere. Apparently, it's about a lonely artist who ends up writing like the true life story of his somewhere in a notebook in a random coffee shop. And he leaves it there, and then I guess the next person picks it up, reads it, writes their life story, and leaves it in a different shop. So that kind of gives me Before the Coffee Gets Cold kind of vibes. I read that book a couple of months ago and absolutely loved it. I don't think it's going to be quite like that, but that kind of like telling a story and then leaving it for the next person, or telling a story in a coffee shop, kind of gives me those same vibes, and I think it'll be really interesting, or at least I hope it is. It sounds really cool. And also the cover is just really, really great, and super bright and colorful. I don't know what color it's going to go in my rainbow shelf because there's multiple. I guess probably orange? I don't know. And I also got The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham. I can't read the bottom of it. Stephen Graham Jones. I have to take these stickers off. I hate when there's stickers on my books. But I've heard so many people talk about this, and it's kind of like, it is in the horror genre, I believe, but it's got a lot of like thriller aspects and feels like traditional horror in some ways with kind of a twist. And I think it's going to be really great. I've heard Kat from Paperback Dreams talk about this all the time, so I think it would be cool to give this one a read. And also the cover is super interesting. So those are the 2 books that I got, and I will update you when I do some more reading. Alright, I am home now, and I just wanted to update you and talk about the very fun thing that I did today. So my boyfriend does reading on Twitch of the Wings of Fire series every Sunday, and this Sunday I ended up reading with him. I was only voicing one character, my favorite character, Glory, but he's been asking me to read with him for weeks, and he was finally like, for Valentine's Day, would you please read with me? I was like, okay, fine. So it's at least a fun thing to do long distance for Valentine's Day. So I ended up having a lot of fun doing that.
And, well, I get to meet my wonderful girlfriend.
Hit me! I also ended up taking a really cool picture of the book that we were reading. It was book 2 of the Wings of Fire series. I'll put the picture in now. But yeah, overall, a really cool bookish day. I haven't really done much short story reading, but I thought it would be fun to document some of the other bookish things that I was doing today. So I'll let you know when I do some more reading. Just wanted to show you the vibe that I always read with. So I have my tea in my cute little dragon book cup. I always have some incense going. I have some sort of like indie music going every time I read. Today it's Vance Joy, and I have my book. So let's get reading. Okay, it's been a little bit since I've updated you, but I have my iced coffee. It's a freezing cold, snowy day outside, but still repping the iced coffee because I'm a lunatic. And I have finished Mothers by Chris Power. And my goodness, is this a 5-star read? I was completely blown away by this. I want to go get Chris Power's other work immediately and just devour it. But I was so impressed with this collection. So later on, I kind of realized what the the thread running through the stories is. Each character is kind of a wanderer. There's a lot of trips. There's a lot of like running away from their own lives. And that's kind of the main theme. But it makes you question why the title is Mothers. And then when I got to the last story, I realized that there are, in the contents, there are 3 stories. I think I discussed this before, but it's Mother 1, Mother 2, and Mother 3 before the titles of the stories. When you get to the last story, you realize that they're all connected. So story 1 follows this girl Eva as a small child and the relationship she had with her mom. And then story 2 follows her when she was a young adult and dealing with her mental illness and almost committing suicide. And then story 3 is about Eva as a mother when she's older and kind of trying to deal with her choices and the fact that she has a family when she never really wanted one. And she ends up actually running away from her family for like 10 years. The story is it's told from her husband's perspective. So that was a fascinating realization. I kind of realized it on my own as I was reading the 3rd story. And then I looked at the contents and I realized why there was Mother 1, 2, and 3. And then I went back to those stories and kind of reread bits to kind of get more of a perspective of Eva. And that made it such a wonderful reading experience. The stories in between definitely have similar themes to them, whether it be having children, whether it be relationships, whether it be mental illness, or kind of trying to escape your life. All of those themes kind of tie in with the actual Mothers sections. So I ended up going through, and I don't know if you can see, I put a couple of tabs in related to like my favorite passages, and I ended up actually starting something that I'm going to continue doing with short story collections. It is to put stars in the front of how many stars out of 5 I gave each of the stories. And you can see that there was only one story that I gave 1 star. Most of them are 4 and 5 star reads. So I think this is like a better way for me to remember how I felt about the stories, because I have such a hard time rating short story collections and not knowing whether to give it 5 stars, even if there was a story I didn't like. And that's what happened here. I'm rating this 5 stars, even though there was one story that was a 1 star and another one that was a 2 star. I am going to still give this 5 stars because the overall vibe of the collection, the enjoyment I had of physically reading it, the way that it looks, the stories that it did have that I loved, like all of that to me outweighs the fact that there was 2 stories that weren't my favorite. So those are my thoughts on Mothers. I would highly recommend this. Just know, if you're going to read it, that there are a lot of intense themes and there is a lot of discussion of mental illness. There's a lot of scenes related to like sex and those kind of things. So if you're somebody who can handle all of that and is comfortable with that, I would highly recommend this. I think that this is wonderfully written and it ties so many different themes together, and it's like an Easter egg hunt, like finding all the little clues that things go together. So absolutely loved this one. Good morning. I have begun Homesick for Another World by Ottessa Moshfegh, and I started this last night and I read 1 story. I did not get very far, but I'm already loving it. I can definitely see Ottessa Moshfegh's style in the collections. Immediately I was like, oh, we're gonna get an unlikable main character. So immediately, like, the first story was totally fit in with the rest of her writing, and I was immediately like, this is what I'm comfortable with. I'm comfortable with this kind of style. I'm used to it. This is great. As I was reading the first story, though, I had a lot that I was thinking about and wanted to say about it, and I decided to annotate. And that might come back and bite me in the butt later on, because it does take longer to get through a book if you annotate it. But I had so much I wanted to talk about, and I felt like interacting with the text was a great way to do that. So sometimes that happens with annotation. Sometimes I just really want to annotate a book, and I have to kind of put aside my desire to finish it more quickly and just take my time with it. So I think that's what's happening here. So I ended up going through, and I'll show you. I did quite a bit of annotating throughout. And I also did some tabbing, like certain quotes that I liked. And I have my fancy bookmark in here, and I added the title to it, so chugging along through that. But I really, really like this collection so far. I have high hopes for it. I really hope that all of the stories are as good as the first one. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case, but a girl can dream, right? I love Otessa Moshfegh. I'm an Otessa Moshfegh stan at this point, honestly. Everything I've read by her is just chef's kiss. But I'm going to continue reading this, and I'll talk to you when I have more to say about it. Hello, welcome back. So I am about 83 pages into The Dark Dark by Samantha Hunt. I'm not sure if I mentioned that I was reading this. I started reading Otessa Moshfegh's collection, and then I started annotating it a lot, and I ended up bringing this one to my boyfriend's house yesterday because I didn't want to bring all the annotation materials, it just was too much work. So I brought this one instead, and I got started on it, and I think I read 3 stories yesterday, and I don't know how I feel about it. Honestly, it's kind of strange. I know that short story collections are usually strange, and I'm usually all for that, but it was odd, and I don't know how to feel about it. So the first story related to a woman who has infertility issues, and she sees her husband's sister, who's kind of a bum, ends up getting pregnant and wants an abortion, and how unfair that is that a woman who doesn't want to be pregnant is pregnant while she can't be. So that is kind of a deep and interesting topic for sure. So the second story kind of follows 2 different timelines. I'm not exactly sure how they weave together. I kind of understand. So the first one follows a military man who's coming back from, I think he was on a ship for like, I don't know, however many months, but he ends up sleeping with a very young girl, and they don't really say how old she is. He just says that she's very young. And then later on we get a perspective of a teacher who works at the high school. We're not really sure if it's nearby or not, but I'm assuming it is. And she works at a high school, and she sees 13 pregnant teenage girls in the same school, which is just unheard of. So I'm assuming that relates to these military men coming back and sleeping with all these girls, and it's some kind of pact or something, and they're all pregnant. I'm not really sure. It was very strange. And the third one is about a woman who turns into a deer, which is oddly a theme that I seem to be getting a lot in this video. One of the stories in Animal Wife was about a woman who like put on a deer costume and became a deer and walked around in the forest and got like laid by a deer, and it was very strange and just made me very uncomfortable. And here we are again with a woman who turns into a deer. So I don't know why that seems to be the theme of this video, but I'm just very confused, and this is a very strange collection, and I don't really know how to feel about it so far. So I'm gonna keep reading, and unfortunately I don't think that this is gonna be a favorite of mine. As much as I freaking love the cover, I wish it would be a favorite, but I don't think that that's gonna happen, unfortunately. Okay, I am currently sitting and relaxing and doing some reading because I just had surgery on my toe. So I'm just gonna chill out and do some reading now. I'm continuing to read Homesick for Another World, and I have a reading buddy too. This is my reading buddy, Eli. He's just sleeping, and we're gonna sit together in the sun. I have my feet elevated, and yeah, let's get reading. is this hair? I've been laying in bed and clearly it has not been good for my hair. So besides the god-awful hair right now, I am almost done with Homesick for Another World. I am like most of the way through this, and I need to talk about blue eyeshadow. I don't understand why Otessa Moshfegh is obsessed with blue eyeshadow. Either she's obsessed with blue eyeshadow or she has some kind of vendetta against blue eyeshadow and blue makeup in general, because it has come up so many times in her stories. Anytime that there is a woman discussed, there's blue eyeshadow involved, and it makes no fucking sense. I guess the blue eyeshadow is like synonymous for like a problematic woman or a slutty woman or like some kind of gross, weird female character, because in this book there are so many characters that are just so gross and we just hate them. And it's like, you love to hate them, you know, like that's the experience that you're looking for when you read Moshfegh. Like, you're looking to hate the characters. But for some reason, all of the women that are like gross and like there's a lot of like greasy makeup, like that's discussed a lot too, like why is everyone's makeup so greasy? But I guess that's like similar to when authors describe characters' voices as like oily. It's kind of like a gross, like weird way to describe someone unlikable. So there's greasy makeup and always fucking blue eyeshadow. I don't get it. So that's my mini rant for this book. I mean, I absolutely love this book. Like, it's great, but it's also terrible. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if anyone's read Otessa Moshfegh, but like, that seems to be the consensus on her, is every time you read one of her books, you're like, ew, this is disgusting, I hate it, but also 5 stars, right? That's just my experience anyway. Okay, it is very late. The quality of this video is very bad, but I have finally finished both Homesick for Another World by Otessa Moshfegh and The Dark Dark by Samantha Hunt. And I finished both of these in the past couple of hours. It has been quite a day of reading. I probably read half of this one and honestly probably half of this one. So it was quite a day. I had some audiobook time with this one, which was very helpful. Because, to be honest, I've been making this video for literally weeks. I think the best collection that I read was Mothers by Chris Power. I think that was the best one. But I think, to a certain extent, short fiction is hard to digest a lot of in a somewhat concentrated period of time, especially so many different collections. Because right now in my mind, they're all kind of getting jumbled together. I'm going to end up giving this one, I think, 4 stars, because toward the end, it got a little bit too strange. The last story kind of went off the deep end. I gave that one like 1 star. A lot of these, I gave 5 stars and 4 stars. It was an overall a pretty good read, but I think it just got a little bit too weird. And I think I'm a little bit fed up with short stories, to be honest. So this one, I think I'm going to give like 3 stars, because there were some in here that I really liked, and then there were others that I really hated. So 2.5 or 3 stars, not sure yet. This was definitely my second favorite one, and Animal Wife and The Secret Life of Walter Mitty were both just pretty good, okay, not my favorite, which is kind of what I expected from short story collections, so I'm not super surprised. So not to sound super negative, I did genuinely enjoy most of these collections. I think it's just a lot to read so many collections of short stories in a concentrated period of time, because it's a medium where you really want to digest the individual story and really spend time with it and think about it and understand it. And I felt like I didn't really get the full experience of being able to pick apart the stories, which I think is why I enjoyed this one more, actually, because I did spend a lot more time with it. I fully annotated this one. Like, I annotated it like crazy. And I did spend a lot more time with it, and I think that was to its benefit as opposed to some of the other ones, because I just tried to kind of breeze through them. All that being said, I am going to go to bed. I hope that you enjoyed this video, even though it was a bit chaotic and lasted for multiple weeks. I hope that you got some enjoyment out of it. I had a lot of fun making it. If you like these kind of videos, feel free to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.